And then, of course, delicate collagen fibers embedded in a semi-fluid matrix. That's mesenchyme. Of course, mucus, Wharton's jelly, another civic message. You can save this, and this is full of stem cells, your baby's stem cells. So I know that some of you in this room, you know, you're at that age where you might be thinking that sometime in the near future you'll be having children of your own, and near future meaning sometime in the next 10 years. You'll be having children of your own. If you do, if your child is born, if you take the Wharton's jelly, the jelly from the umbilical cord, and get it properly frozen and stored, then your child has a source of their own stem cells for their life. And should something horrible occur along the way, then you'll be able to take those stem cells and help them. So this is a service you can get already. It's fairly expensive. The government for the last number of years is trying to come up with a way to subsidize it so that it's not quite so expensive. But Wharton's jelly is full of stem cells and could potentially help your child in its future should it become ill over a variety of different diseases. Now, adult connective tissue, we talked about in lab. It can be loose or dense, right? So loose connective tissue is areolar, adipose, and reticular tissue. That's all loose. Dense tissue, dense regular, dense irregular, and dense elastic with special properties, cartilage, bone, blood, and hematopoietic tissue. So loose areolar connective tissue. Each one of these slides we're going to look at along the way is an excellent way for you to be able to study the function and classification of each one of these tissues. As we can see, it gives you a picture, a microscopic view. It gives you a figurative view where you might find it in the body. And then it talks about what its basic function is and where, again, where you might find it, what cell types it has, and what types of protein fibers it has. So this particular tissue has all of them, collagen, reticular, and elastic. It has all 5 cell types, and it's a loose connective tissue. Loose material, most organs and tissues known as stroma. So it's a packing material, same function as bubble wrap, right? Bubble wrap and areolar tissue, same function. Bubble wrap, a whole lot more fun. I don't know about you guys, but I love bubble wrap. I can just pop bubble wrap all day. But that's a good thing. So dense regular elastic tissue. We know that dense elastic can be used in the vocal folds of the body. It's, of course, elastic fibers. They're useful. Dense irregular in the skin, remember from the lab, dense irregular connective tissue, fibers orientated in every direction, meaning that the tissue is strong to pull in any direction. Again, these slides give you an example of the proteins, so protein fibers arranged. This is mostly collagen fibers in here, forms innermost layer of skin, tells you where. Dense, irregular, elastic, we know in the aorta. So each one of these goes through and explains the slides. The one thing we haven't really talked about, fat in your body, in human bodies, goes yellow. All animals, this isn't the case. If you were to cut open, say, a predatory animal like a wolf or something, then you would find that its fat is white. It's because we have a lot of keratin in our body, and we eat a lot of carrots, and so keratins in vegetables are what, in particular, carrots and such, turn our body fat yellow. So it becomes yellow. So as a baby, you have white fat, but over the years, it becomes yellow. And then we have brown fat. Brown fat is quite different, and there's a lot of studies being done on brown fat right now. If you can increase your brown fat levels, you increase your metabolic rate. What most people don't realize is even though the Inuit people ate very fatty diet, matter of fact, it was almost all fat and meat, very low vegetables, they were the leanest race of people on earth eating that diet. The leanest race of people were Inuit. And so you figure that they live in the north and they eat this blubber diet, and yet they're really lean. They have extremely high levels of brown fat. Brown fat levels increase when it's cold, right? So if you live in a very cold environment, you increase your brown fat levels, and brown fat increases metabolic rate. And metabolic rate keeps you hot. So even though they were lean, they had a high metabolism, and that kept them warm. Right? Does that make sense to everybody? Their glucose fire was burning pretty hot most of the time. That's what it was. So that's brown fat. It's quite different, right? Found only in specific areas, the armpits, the neck, and near the kidneys. Cells are polygonal in shape and have considerable volume of cytoplasm. Nuclei are round, almost centrally located, so a completely different kind of a cell entirely. The nuclei in a normal cell, as we know, we look at all the black dots on the edge. These are the nuclei, which were pushed out to the edge, and the nuclei are right up against the plasma membrane. That's because a regular fat cell is just pure fuel storage. But this fat cell is connected to your hormone system, the brown fat cell, and so it's affecting the metabolic rate. We'll talk more about that in physiology. So connective tissue with special properties. Remember, we talked about the fact that it had special properties, and there were two tissues that did, and that was reticular and adipose tissue. And reticular tissue is special properties because it forms a meshwork, which in turn then can trap white blood cells. We force liquid, like lymph, through it, or red blood cells through it, and as a consequence, we clean the liquid, or we clean the red blood cells. So this is a tissue that can cleanse other things, right? And it cleanses them because of white blood cells. Spaces between cells contain white cells and dendritic cells. So it's between those fibers are white blood cells, and that's the cleaner. And these are the two organs that you can find it in. Now, moving from that to cartilage. When we look at a cartilage, when you were born, a lot of stuff, huh? You're writing like a crazy person. When you were born, you were all cartilage. There was no bone. I walked across the suspension bridge, the Capilano suspension bridge this year in Vancouver in the summer. Some friends came from up north and wanted to go see it. $49.50 per person. Wow. But 50 bucks, I mean, that was expensive. But nonetheless, it reminded me of a story a number of years ago, about 10 years ago. A woman was walking across that bridge and she threw her baby off the bridge. And don't be surprised, number one reason for sudden infant death is mothers killing them. Number two reason, father killing them. Number three reason, an uncle or an aunt. It's common that this happens, but anyway, it's not common that they throw off the bridge. This beautiful little baby flew through the air, bang, 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 landed on the ground, was A-okay. Lived.
Holy shit.
So, it was cartilaginous, not bone, right? The baby was, first of all, light, and it was cartilage. So as it bounced and flipped and flopped all the way down, it was okay at the bottom. A few scratches and bumps and bruises, but it was okay. Now, if it had had solid bone, life would have been so good. We all start as cartilage then, and cartilage becomes bone. But cartilage also it's not like bone, so it's got gelatinous mass in it, right? It's gelatin. It's not mineral. So we talked about in lab that hyaline cartilage is the hardest of the cartilages. It's got such densely packed collagen fibers that it makes it quite hard. And it has low levels of proteoglycan aggregate. Fibrocartilage is the next hardest cartilage. It's got some compressibility though. So it has much more proteoglycan aggregate and less densely packed collagen fibers. And then, of course, elastic is quite compressible. So it has quite a high amount of proteoglycan aggregate, and it has mostly elastic fibers in it. So when we look at, it's got a firm consistency. Its ground substance is proteoglycan and hyaluronic acid together, which traps water. And, of course, that it has, depending on the cartilage, either reticular, collagen, or elastic fibers in it. And it has something else, peri. Now, peri means to surround. Peri, around, or surround, right? And chondra. Chondra is cartilage. So perichondrium is the connective tissue layer, because there's always a connective tissue layer, right? we're going to find out that everything in the body is covered with the connective tissue there. Your eyeball is covered with connective tissue there. Everything is covered with connective tissue there. So perichondrium is the connective tissue layer that covers the edge of cartilage. Now, perichondrium is innervated. Oh, what does innervated mean? Anyone guess? What does innervation? Nerves going to it, yes. Excellent. So it's innervated, it's got nerves. Nerves mean that it's got pain cells, right? Pain sensory ability. So we don't have perichondrium on the articular surface of cartilage. Could you imagine if there was perichondrium on your meniscus? It would be painful. So you couldn't do that. So never on an articular surface do we find perichondrium. But on the sides of cartilage we do. Now from perichondrium, that's where we get the ability to maintain the cartilage. And that's where chondroblasts came from. What built the cartilage in the first place was chondroblasts coming from the perichondrium, entering in and making the cartilage. So perichondrium then is innervation for the cartilage, tells us if it's been damaged, it's telling us if it's going under too much stress, and it's what produced the chondroblasts that made the cartilage in the first place, right? The perichondrium, the covering on the outside of a cartilage. And of course we have three types. We have hyaline cartilage, which again is articular cartilage. It's in the articulations between every bone, right? Every bone touches another bone except for one. Anyone know which bone that is? Yes. Hyoid bone, correct. Hyoid bone, right up here. Doesn't touch another bone, but all the rest do. And because they touch, everywhere where they touch is hyaline cartilage. And of course we saw that it's around the trachea and it's at the joints in the ribs. So hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, two places between the knee and in the intervertebral discs. It is a cartilage that has more proteoglycan aggregate in its ground substance, right? And it has less densely packed collagen fibers than hyaline cartilage does. So it's a little bit more compressible. It's quite a bit more compressible, actually. So elastic cartilage, we talked about last week, and of course you can find it in the ear. Very high levels of proteoglycan, rigid but elastic properties. So, I mean, it has got rigidity, but elastic properties to it. You can bounce back. So, move to bone. Chondro, the prefix for, or the root for cartilage, and osteo, the root for bone, right? So, an osteocyte, a bone site, an osteoblast, a bone building site. Now, we have perichondrium for bone, or for, but we have periosteum, or perichondrium for cartilage. We have periosteum for bone. Bone has no feeling. You know, whack your shin and tell yourself that. I mean, that hurts, right? You start smacking your shin, that's seriously painful. No pain receptors in bone. Zero. How does that hurt so much? Because periosteum, perichondrium, peri, surround cartilage, periosteum, peri, surrounding bone. Bone has a connective tissue layer. Everything is covered with connective tissue layer. It is innervated. It is heavily innervated with pain sensors, right? So it's from the periosteum that you receive pain. Not the bone itself. Bone, zero pain. No pain receptors there. But the covering, oh yeah. Smack your shin, and you know that is very, very painful. So that's what covers the outside of bone. So it's hard connective tissue composed of living cells, osteocytes, and a mineralized matrix. So it's the only connective tissue that has organic and inorganic matter, right? The organic, collagen fibers. The inorganic matter is calcium phosphate, right? So calcium phosphate or hydroxyapatite, right? So calling it hydroxyapatite means it's specific to bone, right? But calcium phosphate is concrete. That's what concrete is, calcium phosphate. So calcium plus phosphate forms hydroxyapatite. Hydroxyapatite is the inorganic compound in bone, and that's what gives it brittleness, but does not give it tensile strength. Remember that ground matrix is two things. It's ground substance and it's protein fibers. In this case, the ground substance gives a very brittle, rigid form, but it doesn't give it tensile strength. It would just crumble, right? But the protein fibers give it tensile strength. Now there are two types, cancellous or spongy bone and compact bone. In point of fact, there is only one kind of bone. It's just where is the bone, and in its gross state, meaning your ability to visualize it with your eyes, one appears spongy and one appears like a solid bar of bone. So its visual appearance in the gross anatomical position or state. In the microscopic point, you could see that they're identical. They're made identically the same, right? But they look completely different to the naked eye. And so that's what we look at. Near the joint of every bone, and we will have a little piece of bone in lab this week and you'll be able to see it, is this area, instead of the medullary cavity being open like this, because this is just an open cavity, it fills up with little plates of bone. And these little plates of bone grow from the edge towards the center and from each other. And they form an intricate meshwork of little bony plates. And in between those bony plates is bone marrow. And as a result, the bone gets very strong around a joint. So these trabeculi, and you can see the word here, trabeculi, these trabeculi are little bony plates that grow out of the side of the bone into the center.